All right, everyone. Today we start off with another day, another persecutorial witch hunt, of course, with the Mar-a-Lago raid and the classified documents scandal in name. It looks like the DOJ may actually intend to charge Donald Trump with mishandling classified documents. I don't think that'll go over well with parts of the electorate, like when it was Alvin Bragg, when it's the Manhattan DA's office. You can say it's partisan. You know, you've got a partially Soros-backed DA upgrading a bunch of misdemeanors that, again, you've thrown out 250 years of civic precedent in order to weaponize your city's prosecutorial system against a former resident. What happened when Alvin Bragg indicted Donald Trump? His polls rose. He became more popular. By the way, it did not hurt him among independent voters. I hate to tell all the liberals this, but if the DOJ gets involved and they do this, here's what happens. Trump deftly points out that Biden was taking his homework with him home as well. He points out that Mike Pence did the same, and that literally a week ago Mike Pence was cleared of everything. They're like, that was no problem. If you're a political partisan on the left, you don't accept that because you're like, well, Trump had so many more documents. And of course, it's Donald Trump, Orange Man bad. It's self-evident that some mishandling happened. With Mike Pence, we're willing to give him a pass, even though he was working for Orange Man for 4 years. We give Biden a pass because we've just got cognitive dissonance, even though his documents were certainly not declassified and they were certainly not in a secure location. At least the Mar-a-Lago had a lock on the door. Hunter was wandering around, weirdo that he was, in the same room as potentially top secret documents from the Biden home. By the way, the list of documents there grew considerably, and there are probably still more out there that we don't know about. It's something that the Republicans are reluctant to look into, because if they explode a big scandal, then they'll have won. And Republicans hate to win, generally speaking, so I don't expect that to go much further. It's just like with that FBI form that the House Oversight Committee now is being given access to it. The FBI is finally pulled back. You're still not going to get it released, though, even though it's not classified, so it's basically a non-starter. If the DOJ indicts Donald Trump for something that several other contemporary politicians are skating on, after an unprecedented breach of civil decorum in the United States, in a situation where there's no established singular manner and methodology that Trump has to go through to declassify anything. Again, I've talked about this. It's specifically for the purposes of the chief executive's diplomatic capabilities. I'll reiterate that in a moment. If the DOJ does that, the Uniparty risks pushing, I think, independent voters a bit too far. You could see a situation where most people, unless they have political partisan leanings or cognitive dissonance, so Biden fans like, core leftoids or something, they will understand that the government is overstepping. They will understand that it's a persecutorial witch hunt, not a prosecutorial case, and it'll become a big problem. So, go ahead, bring the charges and see what happens to the polling average. Trump already sucks all the oxygen out of the room on a regular basis. You're basically handing him yet more leverage. And at this point, I think he becomes nominee even from a jail cell, mainly because the field against him is so weak and so tarnished, and mainly because he has just such a strong core fan base. Again, at his darkest hour, he was managing to segue into the low 40s, so almost half of the party supporting him, even at a time when he was, it's pre-indictment. He sort of disappeared for all intents and purposes because he stubbornly wouldn't return to Twitter. Yeah. I think Trump will do fine. If the DOJ does that, politically speaking, it's arguably a disaster for the Democratic Party and for the rest of the Republican field. I don't think that it hurts Trump whatsoever. It's also hypocritical. It's also bullshit. Again, as I explained, the key thing to remember here is that the President of the United States is the chief diplomat of the United States. He is constantly holding meetings, getting classified things told to him that are on documents that are literally classified. He's getting briefings from Intel. He's getting briefings from the military. He's getting briefings from cabinet leaders, etc., etc., etc. The number of classified things that a sitting U.S. president going to meetings, etc., hears on a daily basis is probably well within the double-digit range. That's a lot of material. Now, the president also conducts diplomacy. and talks to other people, to constituents, to business leaders within the United States and out, etc., etc. Any president privy to that much information is going to have shared classified material with other people. It does not matter whether it's in verbal or document form. The president effectively has declassified the material merely by speaking about it. Now, when we're referencing Donald Trump, these materials, therefore, at the time that he took them, as President of the United States, he was still in office at the time, was fully within his right to do so. The moment that they left secure storage and they became Trump's de facto personal possessions, a legal case could be argued that it can't be mishandling. At the time, he's the President of the United States. He's effectively declassifying the documents by removing them from a secure storage to the Mar-a-Lago. That would be one legal angle that we're going with. Also, Trump can simply claim on the stand, if he ever gets on one, in regards to this case, hey, yeah, I've talked about the content of these documents with a bunch of people. I did it while I was president, therefore they're declassified, game over. Well, I mean, you can charge him. You can have a kangaroo court with a jury that's predisposed to find him guilty. That's certainly, I mean, I would have considered that vastly unlikely up until a few years ago when all of the real witch hunting began. Really, we're in an entirely new era. Civic decorum has gone the way of the dinosaur, and without any indicator that any national security was breached or there were any problems stemming from these documents, you've decided to throw out all of that precedent in order to persecute Trump because Orange Man's scary. He simply scares the Unipartyists. They are afraid of him being reelected. They would not be going to this length to try to stop him. And again, we're not sure this actually happens. This is anonymous sources familiar with the matter say, so grain of salt mode, it's likely. We've seen that the reporting with regards to persecution of Donald Trump has been more accurate. That's because they have insiders within Intel, and they want to scoop one another because it's lucrative. So I'll just assume that it's true. It's vastly perverted what's being done within our legal system right now, simply because they're afraid of him. And they wouldn't be doing this if they weren't. They wouldn't rock the boat. They would say, okay, Trump has withdrawn to Truth Social. He's got 1/10 of as much engagement as he used to get. You've got other viable Republicans in the field, well, at least one of them. All we have to do is ignore him. And they were trying this for a number of years. Ignore him to death. Don't talk about him. The legacy networks outside of stuff like this still try to do that. They would not go that extra mile and use a federal agency, the DOJ itself. This is not a state case like with Alvin Bragg or Georgia. This is a federal case. They would not be going after Donald Trump at that level, risking looking massively partisan and being transparently persecutorial unless they thought they didn't have another choice. They wouldn't do that. They're not used to having to go out of their way to that degree. They only step beyond that, trying to gulag your political dissidents really is execution after that. So, yeah, we're one step away from dissident genocide in the United States, I suppose. Now, there are some people who would support that too because they've got perverted, diseased minds. That's about all. Peace out.